Calisthenics has hit a plateau.
You need to leave!
But it's all good. Just like we plateau in training, calisthenics as a sport is plateauing right now. Growing pains are normal for any sport on the come up. It happened to skating a bunch of times. And if you look hard enough, pretty much any big boy freestyle sport has had to overcome major obstacles to get where it's at today. And that's a good thing, because calisthenics can learn a lot by looking at what other sports have gone through as well. See, when we hit plateaus in training, often it helps to analyze our process, identify our issues, and look for solutions so that we can reach our goals. And that's my hope here today. The way I see it, calisthenics today has 4 major obstacles it needs to overcome to get through its plateau. The first one being the actual format of the competitions themselves. Now, before I get started, let me say, I think for the most part, the people running these calisthenics comps are doing a great job of pushing the competition format forward. That being said, there are a lot of motherfuckers that are taking advantage of their athletes. But overall, most of these organizers are good, dedicated people. What I'm saying here isn't about one comp or organization. And it's definitely not like I think I know how to put on a comp better than any of them do. But competition is the backbone of any sport. It's what creates the demand for athletes to push boundaries and create new levels. And so far, there has yet to be an agreed upon format for what a calisthenics comp is supposed to look like. And that's cool. There are different types of comps in other freestyle sports too. But if we want to level up and also create a safe environment for athletes to compete in, we need to figure out what works and what doesn't. We definitely want competitions to test endurance. But at what point are top athletes too fatigued to perform at their best by the time the finals come around? And when does that fatigue turn into an injury risk? We want comp structure to reflect the energy of the sport while also bringing out the best in the athletes. So should we be pushing for the one-on-one battle format, tournament style, exhibition? What's the judging criteria? Are the judges qualified? And how do we avoid bias from judges in such a tight community? I think a lot of these questions will get answered with time, but there's still a bigger question. How do we as a community make these comps as spectator friendly as possible? The reality is, without a proper fan base, there's inevitably less room for branding and sponsorship money. Which brings me to our second obstacle, lack of funding. The truth is, sports need money to grow. And the core issue with funding in calisthenics lies in the essence of the sport itself. Calisthenics requires zero equipment, and that's a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, there's less room for profits and brands to come in and sell products, but on the other hand, it has the potential to be globally accessible. There's practically no barrier to entry. You pretty much need nothing besides your body and the floor that you're standing on. I struggled to find comparisons to sports with similar issues. The history of skateboarding, for example, is built on a culture, on globally recognized brands, iconic athletes, and sharpened through competitive successes. But all of this is also built on top of the need for a product, skateboards. Calisthenics ain't got no skateboards.
Hi, I'm Captain Obvious.
So how do we tap into that global potential? And how do we bring funding into our sport without a product to sell? Because of a lack of funding, calisthenics is struggling to be a viable career path for top-level athletes. And that leads me to the third obstacle that I think calisthenics has to overcome, which is a lack of career opportunity. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely calisthenics athletes out there that are able to make a good living through social media, sponsored content, and coaching, and that's great to see. But the reality is, for the most part, a lot of athletes struggle to make ends meet simply by practicing the sport. And that becomes especially problematic as athletes get older. See, when we're young, a little money here and there, some clout on social media, and winning some comps can be enough to keep us dedicated. But as athletes grow up, and as they look to start families and pursue bigger goals, coaching and sponsorship is sadly usually not enough on its own. And this lack of career opportunity can make it almost impossible for current competitive athletes to really give themselves entirely to the sport if they're worried about putting food on the table. See, competing at the pro level of any sport takes serious dedication. When great athletes around the world, young and old, are deciding what sport to dedicate themselves to, calisthenics can be a tough sell if they can't see a path forward towards feeding their families. And that can foster tension, and with tension comes hostility. And that leads me to the fourth and final obstacle that I think calisthenics needs to overcome, which is a shift towards negativity within the vibe and politics of the community. See, I like to think of calisthenics like a kid in its teen years. When the sport was young, it was so supportive.
Peace to the world, you know what I mean?
With a lot of its identity built on encouraging others. Back then, all three branches of calisthenics were mixed, both in competitions and at calisthenics parks around the world. Over time though, athletes specialized, learned more about certain movements, body mechanics, they got better, more refined, but also more critical. Lately, I feel like that criticism can often turn to negativity, and that negativity can sometimes turn into jealousy, and it shouldn't be like that. We're all the same when we're on the bars, and it's on us as members of the community, myself included, to be better to our fellow athletes and human beings. I think coming together will be the key if we truly want to thrive as a sport. The truth is, I just love calisthenics. This sport has given me so much, and I just want to see it be the best that it can be. And I think we're on the right track. But in the meantime, let's try to find some comparisons to other sports that could help us get through this plateau. So like I said earlier, I think most of the problems with the competition format will be figured out with time, but that other question still remains. How do we make these comps as spectator friendly as possible? I think two great examples of how a community was able to make their sport more accessible to the public come from two worlds that seemingly have nothing to do with calisthenics: chess and darts.
What the fuck?
And maybe chess and darts don't fit the general definition of a sport, but both pit two competitors 1v1, the stakes are high, and most importantly, both communities have found a way to build public interest in their product. Chess content has blown the fuck up in the past year or so, thanks in large part to the charisma of content creators and commentators that have worked to make the game accessible to the general public. They bridge the gap and have become some of the biggest creators and streamers in the world. To make comps into serious spectator events, we have to make it more accessible to the layman. Luckily, calisthenics is such a cool sport. It's fun to look at, and so many of the athletes have incredible backstories. What's missing is an understanding of the subtleties of what's actually happening on the bars for the average person tuning in. It's hard to really enjoy what you don't quite fully understand. But there are ways. Check out the spectator experience from this year's World Darts Championship.
Wow, the World Championship final. Michael van Gerwen is on a main darter in the World final and just misses double 12. Over to you, Michael Smith.
One man misses, does the other man get? I've never seen the like. Come on, Spolly boy. Yes, double 12. That is the most amazing leg dance you will ever see in your life. I can't speak.
What the fuck?
Like, holy shit, bro. Darts, the commentary, the live feed, the athletes, and say what you want. I got no beef with darts, but calisthenics gotta be an easier sell. But chess, darts, and the personalities involved have done an amazing job getting the public invested, and we can learn a lot from how they've done it. I really hope someone emerges in the calisthenics community that can bridge that gap, and we can get him or her on the mic for a big event. With spectators comes recognition, with recognition comes funding, and with funding comes career opportunities for athletes and others in the space. I think it's a matter of time, but that leaves calisthenics with its biggest challenge yet: setting aside our differences and coming together as a community. See, I've always been a huge fan of skateboarding, and if you look into its history, you'll find that that sport faced many obstacles more than once, and it was the community that came together to support each other through trying times, and helped rebuild it stronger into what it is today. The same is true for snowboarding and so many other sports that have hit plateaus on their way to mainstream success. And I think calisthenics could be about that too. The growth, the unity, if we just focus on our love for the sport, the lessons we learned on the bars, and the hype that brought us together in the first place. Anyway, thank you guys for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, let me know what you think about the future of calisthenics. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time, and I will see you next time.